Welcome to Behind the Wines, a freshly bottled podcast about Australian wine, the wines we love, and the people behind them. My mission is simple. I want to get down into the cellar with sommeliers, stomp some grapes with winemakers, and have chats with our finest critics, growers, retailers, and chefs. Today we're joined by Yuki Hirose, Group Sommelier for the Lucas Group in Melbourne. Originally from Japan, Yuki has built an impressive career in Australia, previously leading wine programs at Rockpool Bar and Grill and 11 Bridge. He's a Master Sommelier, an ASI Diploma Gold holder, and placed third in the 6th International Sommelier Competition. Welcome to Behind the Wines, Yuki.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your early days. What sparked your passion for wine?
Well, it's been quite some time ago now, but I was working in a restaurant and I was working behind the bar, actually one of the great restaurants in Shibuya, a crazy town. And then I saw there was a gentleman recommending wine and I was wondering what he was doing, and that was a sommelier. Then I was always passionate about a cocktail, studying about whiskey, single malt, this and that. But really, the restaurant that's serving great food, and then it's really connection between food and wine was something very fascinating me. And I went to the gentleman and asked some advice, or asked just questions. And that gentleman happened to be half Australian and half Japanese. I stood in touch with him, and that's how I sort of start connection with sommelier, and also start thinking, maybe I want to go overseas and study English as well as the wines. That's how I started about 20 years ago.
And so how did growing up in Japan shape your perspective on food and beverage?
If I can go back to when I was walking behind the bar, I want to be an amazing bartender. In Japan, everything takes time. So my senior bartender, for instance, they're not going to teach me how to shake or how to stir the cocktail or anything like that. You have to work hard, put head down, and you have to almost steal from seniors. Again, the sushi chef is the same. They're not gonna teach you, how to make a sushi. You just need to keep making, egg omelets for 5 years. Then before you're getting the sushi chef, and it was the same. Patience is very, very important for me. So when it comes to Australia, there's lots of challenges and the highs and lows. But always remember the time I was just shaping an ice behind the bar, and no one really give it to you. It's things you given to you, it was easy to lose. But if you gain it, if you learn it, or if you store it from something, you build it, then it's forever yours. So in my opinions, being sommelier it's a great concept, but you gotta just put so much hard work, and so the patience and the resilience is maybe coming from my background. And then Japan has that kind of everything what you want to do well, it's minimum 10 years, if not 20. So that's something I can say about my cultural background in terms of Japanese.
You touched on kind of before with the connection with the person who was half Japanese, half Australian. Tell me about the lead up to Australia. How did that happen?
I was a uni student. I was studying economy back in Japan, but I was so fun working restaurant behind the bar, talking to the guest. And it happened to be the restaurant I was working in Shibuya. There's lots of international guests. And the gentleman is half Japanese, half Australian, obviously speak English, and they just talking and communicating well. And I really like the culture of the people, Westerner people, let's say at the time. Just, they're not sitting down, just having beer, standing up, just really enjoying themselves. And I'm like, those people are it's really cool. I want to know what the people's like, what's in the head, right, and kind of stuff. So, and I asked hey, I want to communicate with them, because it's just been at the time, imagine 20 years ago, just so much gaps. And so I decided to talk to Malcolm, the sommelier, hey, I want to go to study the English. And he said, mate, you got to go to Australia. It's only 10 hours from here. And that's how I started. And I was trying to get the job, my friends getting job at the bank or the financial and things like that. None of them resonated to me. And it was in 2005, 2006, when I was 22 years old. I decided, and I just said to my parents, look, I want to study overseas a couple of years. And then that's how it started.
And so where did you arrive?
Sydney first. I was working holiday visa in 2005.
So becoming a Master Sommelier, it's an incredible achievement.
Thank you.
What's the journey been like for you?
It's process. I can say many, many things and from many different perspectives, but I think that because I've been failing this exam for 5 times, it just almost in the end, it was my personal challenges. I didn't do this exam to get the accreditation or get the better pay or better positions. I already have great positions and working in amazing companies. I didn't really need it to get any higher position. But every time we go to the exam, come back, prepare another 12 months, went back again, and I know I can do this, And all my friends, he passed and she passed as well. And it's everyone's passed and going other side, and I'm just myself standing here. I was like, if he can do it, that means I can do that as well. I'm not gonna accept that he or she's better than me. I can do this. So that's sort of engines or power, the fuel for me to keep going. And I was almost many times I was so angry myself, like why I'm not passing? It's so close, but it's not there yet. And always the feedback from other and Master Sommelier is like, keep going, keep at it. Like you're gonna be great, you're gonna pass. But I was like, are you sure? And just keep coming. That was very consuming, as bouncing back from there is very important. And it was great that I keep coming back. But also I wanted to say that this is not for everyone. I was fortunate enough to be coming back 5 or 6 times every year with, it cost money to do so, to go to Europe, come back, not only that, but preparing wine for tasting. Also you're working and you got a very understanding your spouse or your family member or your wife or whatever that is. And I was so fortunate to have generous company behind me, let me take time off and sometimes supported some sample wine or tasting wine. And those amazing industry people along the way is always supportive, and we always appreciate. I always say thank you and appreciated their help. Without those help and understanding or support from around you, you won't be able to do this.
Yeah, so it sounds like you were really supportive, you've shown great support, and also you demonstrated real resilience. So what were the biggest challenges for you in preparing for the exam?
As I said, it's the biggest challenge for me. This Master Sommelier examination consists of 3 components. One, service, blind tasting, and theory. And service comes relatively easy because that's what you do every day. And theory is verbal, it's not written. So you gotta prepare yourself or train yourself that you get your question, process it, and you gotta speak out your answers, right? So verbal. So that's kind of took me some time to get the system going, because when I'm studying with a paper, write down, read the things. But it just, when you hear the question, when you listen or when you hear the question, it's just completely different. Like you kind of know the answer, but you just didn't come out. So that process is very, very tricky for me. But other than that, I kind of like studying. People say, oh, I don't want to study late night, early morning, but I kind of enjoy that, because when I woke up early morning, even though it's late night finished, that's the previous night, I feel like, I've done something. But if I don't study, I woke up late and go straight to work, and I feel like I should have done it. So it's making routine every morning, 6 o'clock, have a coffee, and you just hit 2 hours before work, and you finish 12 o'clock midnight. If you can put 45 minutes, that'd be great. But just consistently just reading the subject. So that's the theory part that it took me quite some time to pass. But then tasting it could play a lot with I just mentioned earlier, the anxiety of that. That's very, very hard. And I can train my calibration of acidity, tannin, alcohol, that you have to do, that's what you do for training or lots of tasting. But anxiety is only you have once a year to test this anxiety, because as I said, I prepare all 12 months tasting 1,000 wines. And yes, I'm good. I'm getting there. I can get alcohol, everything right. And then go to the exam, sit in front of 3 Master Sommelier, and then just burned everything, broke out. So that feeling is only you can experience once a year, right? That's why you have to sometimes put myself into the very strange circumstances or situation, like front of 20 chefs in the front of a kitchen, for instance. So I need to prepare myself for this anxiety, because it will come, and it just doesn't matter how much you prepare for it. It can wipe out quite easily. So this is something I struggle a lot. But I'm glad that it came through, because I become better tasters and stronger person.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. It sounds like a correlation, like you're an athlete preparing for the Olympics and you've got that one chance to perform your best and you're doing it on the world stage, so to speak. I can really relate to that being incredibly pressurized environment. So how has earning MS title changed your career perspective on wine?
I have been asked this quite a few times, but long story short, or the long answer short, it's nothing. Master Sommelier is for sommelier, and I'm sommelier, right? A sommelier is being restaurant floor, being great on the floor, and providing or creating an amazing experience to the guests. That's the full stop, right? And lots of people ask, hey, what's your next steps, your next things? And like, no, I've done this. As I said earlier, no one need to know that I passed my MS exam. I only need to know. So I don't have to wear this pin, for instance, because I didn't do the exam to get this pin, right? For the job perspective, I get lots of questions and sort of kind of respect from people who's doing this exam. But essentially, I don't want to say, hey, I'm Master Sommelier, then, so what? It's nothing changed from the before exam and after exam. You're same persons, right? So I just don't really like to be sort of becoming superstar, or I don't want to be sort of treated as special. So in terms of job positions or what I do every day, I haven't changed anything. But what I can do now is that what I have been given from others, like lots of support, as I mentioned earlier, it's time to me to give those back to the people, and this really training other people who's trying to be MS or sort of being professional on this industry. I want to do more training. But by passing this exam, I can speak with a little more confident. Okay, I can tell you how I studied. It doesn't mean it works for you, but this is how I did, what I did, and each person has to find their own way. It's more about how we're giving this back to the industry and then growing those young kids, young sommelier, just like I was doing my MS. Lots of other MS helped me. So that's as you become Master Sommelier, you're not sommelier anymore. You're behind the scene on the computer looking at the, sort of business perspective, which is important. I get it. But I still really do like to be on the floor because that's what I'm trained for. That's why I spend my over 10 years of time to become great on the floor. And then now I'm not using this skill set on the floor. That's a shame. But really, I will try to be on the floor at least 3 or 4 days a week. For example, and the people look at me as, okay, here's Master Sommelier, how he's going to pour the wine, how he's open the wine, how he's decanting wine. And those of that, it's big pressure on me. I can feel it on my shoulder. But it's very, very important to be Master Sommelier on the floor.
I guess there you just want to be leading by example is really important for you.
Correct.
So you've worked at some of the finest restaurants in Australia. How does the wine program differ at Lucas Group compared to, say, Rockpool or even 11 Bridge?
Rockpool being, I grew up in the Rockpool, which is great wine list. It's relatively simple, like steakhouse and large list of the by the glass as well as by the bottle. Now, those Lucas Group, I'm looking after a few different restaurants, including Japanese cuisine to steakhouse to more international. And there's tasting menus or matching wines and some sake matching for the Japanese cuisine. So it's slightly more complicated and detail-oriented. And I learn a lot through what glassware we use, how we minimize the wastage. Kind of those management is very, very important. While Rockpool is, as I said, is one restaurant. Yes, they're busy, they're pumping through, but just keeping up great by the glass and by the bottle, keeping up the demand basically. That was what I was focusing on the Rockpool. But it's again, those different program in each different venues. Again, there's lots of sommelier in each venue that I need to look after, train them, mentoring them. That's another part of my job.
How do you curate a wine list that balances classic wines or wines that are trending and experimental wines?
First of all, there's different cuisine, different venues, as I said. So, for Japanese restaurant, we have a made in Chablis, for instance. We don't have to have necessarily big a Bordeaux or like Italian focus in Japanese cuisine. While we have the sort of steakhouse, Americano, which is driven by Italian steakhouse. We have lots of big Barolo, Brunello de Montalcino, and Dolcetto, of course. And then sort of other venues are different focus. To answer your question in terms of balance between sort of aesthetic wine or sort of interesting wine versus, those Pinot Grigio and the Chablis, it is challenging for me. it's, as I said, just before the MS, it's very important, the sommelier being flow, but also creating wine program that's profitable. So Pinot Grigio, the Prosecco, the Chablis, that's very popular, it's gone a lot. We need to make sure that's solid product, the quantity and create the money maker, let's say. Then, but if you have that Chablis, Prosecco, and Chablis, but we have amazing sommelier on hand with that. So we're trying the aesthetic grape variety from Greek, Libera from Italy, and skin contact wine from Georgia. Those wines are interesting for the guest, but for the sommelier as well. So really, we gotta use that knowledge that we studied and we learn, and need to be reflected in the wine list. So it cannot be driven by those skin contact wine, but it's really important to have those wine from Switzerland, wine from South Africa. It's not gonna be biggest sales in the wine list, but by having those, we'll engage the sommelier to the wine list better. Having more diversity on the wine list is for the best interest for the business, but for the guest as well. Yes, I find some tricky, but really, as long as you have a solid base on those fast-moving bread butter wine, then that's very important. Therefore, you can have a little more fun on the side project almost.
What's the common misperception people have about sommeliers?
I mean, obviously, snobby, and I guess the guests still have perception of they are going to upsell something. And that's not only for the wine or restaurant industry, but sommelier's job is creating great experience in the restaurant, in dining room. So for me, like I said to my sommeliers, like, sure, you guys don't have to worry about the revenues and numbers and the figures. You're suggesting a glass of sweet wine or port wine in, just because you want to have more sales, so that the dining experience will be completed in a better status. So the way somebody suggests those wine, it's really not selling wine, but hey, can I organize some aperitif for you? Because when I go to a restaurant, I want to have a drink straight away. And some people want to lead a menu, but I kind of know what I like. So by suggesting, can I get something? Can I get some martini or gin tonic? People say suggestive selling and things like that, but no, it's really all about coming down to creating great and smooth experience for the guest. But the people often approach a table with a wine list and say, oh, no, we just gonna have a bad glass, or just sort of afraid that we're gonna come and recommending a super expensive one and the person cannot afford and sort of being sort of humiliated or whatever. But no, I'm here to help you to choose some wine. It's just sort of help, it's more, the sommelier need to be more support the guest's experience, and don't like the sound of sommelier because it's really have that connotation of upsetting and the snobby, things like that. But no, here we are, I don't care about sales, but I do care about having a beautiful cocktail to start and then finish with a glass of port. If you want to, because that's not for me, but for you to have a great time. That's kind of message that I want to send off to our sommelier, and hopefully the guests will change the perception of the sommelier.
I've always found my experience in fine dining, when there's complicated wine lists, that actually engaging with a sommelier has always brought me a better outcome. Talking to them what wines I like. And you can even be honest in price ranges and things. And often you get a better wine. My memory can pick out 5 or 6 wines that I said, I've had that before, enjoy it. But there's so many wines in there. And I guess that's your experience. You can provide guidance on that.
People be afraid to say, oh, I don't know, or something that they don't feel comfortable being not knowing and being sort of has a less knowledge about wine. It's just really not about that. Just having conversation with, hey, I came from Italy or Tuscany, or wine that was great. So we have a conversation about it. If you relax and somebody relax, and that's why I want to take ties off and pins off, and just, it doesn't matter you're sommelier or bartender or host or chef. I'm here to just doing same thing, which is creating great experience. So I'm just happen to be wine focused guy, but it's, sure, tell me where did you go, or where are you going in the next holiday, and let's have wine from that region. That conversation really has to come naturally.
So I'm sure you've had many memorable or unusual food and wine pairings across the journey. Can you just share with our audience any particular ones that of note?
I had some Amontillado sherry, which not many people drinking nowadays. The sherry, people think it's cooking wine. But the great Amontillado with the mushroom risotto really goes well because the sherry has a nutty kind of mushroomy character, and a well-made risotto that was quite clear that it goes well. But when you put in your mouth together, it just really like, wow, it works perfectly. So that's something I recently enjoyed. Otherwise, I sometimes try not to be caught up by too much about wine and the food matching. But I like the sort of obviously light, crisp white wine to begin with the light entrees. And it doesn't matter what about that is. Just sort of sometimes by drinking wine or putting wine in the mouth, just clean your palate and cleanse up and just enjoy your food itself. It'd be great if it's come together and they enjoy together, but sometimes it's more important than what you like to drink. And there's no point that you force yourself to drink something you don't like, or you force yourself to eat something you don't want to eat. I think I always be more flexible and forget about food and wine matching. What do you feel like tonight? Beer or cocktail or a glass of white, and eat what you want and drink what you like.
It's funny that you mentioned sherry. It seems like sherry's following me around. I had a dinner the other week, and at the end we thought we'd have a sherry as a DJ's effort, and then a friend of mine rang me up the next day and said, I've got a spare ticket for a masterclass sherry tasting at the Prince wine store, and it was amazing. Yeah, just to try things and take away misconceptions.
Yeah, it would be great that if somebody suggests something that they guest or consumer never had before and open up new doors. They don't have to. They can. We're not here to teach the wine to the guests, but it'd be nice to. Hey, and I know you enjoy Chablis or Chardonnay, but what about? Have you had a Marsan Lucan? Have you had the Aligote? And then the same price range, and oh wow, this is great. And then maybe this person gonna go look for Marsan Lucan for the next occasion. It's always nice to have. Break up a little bit, to introduce something a little bit new.
So what do you see as the biggest trends in wine right now?
Biggest trend. I mean, apart from, Chablis has been very, very strong for last 2-3 years, but those prices going up every year. I think we are really looking at Italian white has been sort of around the market all the time, but wine from Etna, I think the white wine's something really interesting, and not yet the consumer or the sort of guest knows about those wines, but I think there's a very good potential down there. The Etna Red is already being in the market quite some time and has been lots of sort of discussions and research has been done, but Etna Bianco, the white one from there is also it's very interesting. And trend-wise, otherwise you just need to find a new Burgundy because it's really Burgundy becoming unattainable. The price gone just skyrocketed. So, okay, we can have Burgundy, so what can we have? Beaujolais has been quite amazing, but there's steadily the Beaujolais price is going up as well. So, we always look for what's next, if not the south, maybe go look at the north of the Burgundy, maybe the sort of, a Fixin or northern end of Burgundy. We're just always curious about it and just try not to be caught up too much by appellations, like, the Burgundy, it must be good. Just try everything, if it's César or if it's, Gamay or blend of those two. I'll try everything, anything, rather than just, oh no, I just want to look for Burgundy or Pinot Noir.
And how do you think Australian wine is perceived on the global stage?
I've spoken to a few people in the States or the UK market, and they're still developing stage as far as they're concerned. In the US, for instance, I don't know how many people looking for the Australian wine on the shelf in the bottle shop. I know the restaurant has the Australian wine on their wine list, but I don't know how actively sommelier been recommending on the guests are interested in Australian wine. I'm not so convinced that it's going to be strong right now. There's potential, but there's massive still gap between those domestic wine in the US and Australian wine. And I spoke to other gentleman in UK, his MW, Master Wine, but he also said that it's quite challenging to put the Australian wine in the guest's glass. The Pinot Noir from New Zealand might be slightly easier, but any wine from Australia, it's been Pinot or Chardonnay. It's very small market overseas in UK or US at the moment. It is, but I strongly believe that quality, particularly Chardonnay, I mean, Chardonnay, Pinot, everything, but quality is there. So really about it, is it still yellow kangaroo doing damage on the market perception? I don't know, but it's just the price is probably, it doesn't really help. The Australian wine is pretty expensive, the higher the labor. But it's just something really preventing Australian wine to expand, get the people excited and interested about Australian wine, and let them open up their mind and let them drink more Australian wine. But it has many challenges still ahead.
And just with a personal experience, are there any Japanese wines or sake styles you think more Australians should be exploring?
From Japan?
Yeah.
I start seeing a little bit, but apart from a wine from Yamanashi, which been in the Australian market for quite a long time, I haven't seen many, the Koshu or the Muscabelli A, which is sort of an indigenous Japanese varietal. Haven't seen a strong ground hold in Australia yet. Japan has quite particular sort of varietal and style they're making, and also obviously this production is quite small, and some wine just doesn't travel quite well, even though only north to south. So again, it's lots of potential, lots of sort of Asian cuisine restaurants in Australia, not only Melbourne, but lots of great food there. So I'm sure there's those wine from Japan, which always have quite subtleness and kind of umami or savory driven. It really goes well with those Japanese food, because I found that I'm sure everyone's same have a hard time finding white wine to go with sashimi or sushi, because it's vinegar in it, there's soy sauce in it. But I don't know the reason behind, the chemical behind of it, but the Japanese wine, it really go with the Japanese food. Just a matter of finding a right price and right style, and then transport carefully. And then hopefully in near future, we're going to see some more diverse style of the Japanese wine in a local Japanese restaurant.
And so what advice would you give to someone wanting to start a career as a sommelier today?
Sommelier has been, this whole industry facing lots of challenges nowadays. As far as I know, the CMS called the Master Sommelier, the introductory certified has been happening in Australia quite some time now. But recent years, particularly this year, the application numbers slightly dropped a bit. And we are discussing why that happens. Maybe we're going to have less influx of the international people, and they cannot get permanent residency by working in a restaurant anymore, because the law changes every year. And there are more exam or CMS, the exam happening in Singapore, Hong Kong, so they don't have to come to Australia. But I think overall, I feel like that we have sort of decreased amount of interest being sommelier within Australia, within the young sort of generations. And this profession is amazing. Like, it's great in Australia. Sommelier is, working in a restaurant is one of profession. Back in Japan or other country, it's sometimes working restaurant is the last things you want to do. That makes sense. So we want to create those cultures, get going, and more. I want to, as I said, I achieved something. Now it's time to get those people more excited about wine and becoming sommeliers. So that's very important. But some people are also, I've seen some the people come and, I want to be sommelier. It's great, welcome, right? But it's great concept being sommelier, but it's sometimes the person doesn't really understand what's work need to be on behind of it. You're not sommelier just because you call yourself sommelier. You're not sommelier just because your company hire you as a sommelier. You become sommelier, you study your stuff, and then you walk on the floor, and then that become your sommelier. So I'm not scared of those young kids, but I just need to aware of that there's lots of work need to be done behind of it. You cannot be a sommelier overnight. It's just the years if you're studying and curious about everything. Again, at the same time, if you pass your CMS exam, it doesn't get you sommelier as well. You have a qualification, you got the knowledge, now you got to utilize that knowledge on the front of the guests on the restaurant floor, and then again, you become sommelier. So you just need to have both segment comes together, and it can't be either one of those.
And so what's next for you in your career? Any upcoming projects or any goals?
No, I'm really happy, looking after this expanding. Lucas Group has been expanding a lot, and as I said, different projects, different venues within the company, and we have amazing bunch of the sommeliers that I like to look after. So this is really great position, a great environment that I was in, and I'm hoping that I was giving back enough to those team of sommelier within the group. I'm 42 years old now, and I got 3 months old. Just came out end of last year. So, for me to time to focusing on the work, yes, but also balance out my personal life and, looking my little one growing up, and maybe I need to look after my parents. All those stuff that I wasn't able to do so for last 10 years because of this exam, but it has been always there that my MS exam is on my way. So now I get to do, hey, I can look after my wife and the kids and my family. I think that's such as life, right? And I as much as I love working and looking after those sommelier in the wine program, that's what I love. But you can't keep doing that. You gotta have something else as well. So I'm really happy doing both, and I hope I'm doing okay for both. But yeah, it's quite busy life ahead, and I'm really looking forward to doing more of those.
Balance is certainly important. Do you have any final thoughts or advice for wine lovers out there?
I think Australian people, as far as they're concerned, is quite open. Like if I say, hey, have you had Albaniño before? And he goes, oh, I haven't, but I'll try, then I quite like that kind of the feeling and openness to it. And I like to, still people are only doing Chablis. It's fine, I'm happy with that. But as I said, there's always different opportunities. So I like to encourage and suggest to those people who are interested in wine, just always just open up and just have a taste. If you don't like it, that's fine, that you learn something. So quite boring that you just keep drinking same wine over again. By doing so, of course, you find it's more deep and more understanding of each wine, but it's just really, in life is too short and there's so many wine to try. So just open up. If something be suggested, the answer is always yes. And it just, I'll have a glass. I think that's something becoming more interesting in a long way.
Well, that's a great way to end on. But what I'd like to do now is what I call glass half full, where I give you some quick fire questions, which just have one word or short answers. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. If you could only drink one wine for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Riesling from Germany.
What's the most unexpected place you've found a great bottle of wine?
In a pizza joint in Sydney, where I found that Beyond Santi back vintage. That was my surprise.
What's the most surprising food and wine pairing you've ever tried?
I tried the aged sake and then the Parmesan cheese. That was really something I never expected.
Name a wine region you think is underrated.
Orange in New South Wales.
What's the most memorable wine you've had?
1961 La Chapelle from Paul Joboret, the Hermitage, 100% Syrah.
What's one thing people always get wrong about sommeliers?
We're not here to upsell the wine. We're here to support the guest.
Best hidden gem wine bar in Melbourne?
I think Society, I know it's not wine bar, it's a restaurant, but they have a lounge in their bar area. Caravan selection in the Society is remarkable.
And if you weren't a sommelier, what would you be doing?
I want to be a car racer, just like Yuki Tsunoda.
Favorite Australian wine region to visit?
Master range.
A lesser known Australian winery that deserves more attention?
I'd like to explore more in Gippsland, but I can't really pick up a wineries. But the wine region will be Gippsland.
Which restaurant in Melbourne has the most exciting wine list beside your own?
I often go to the Embra. It's always have something new and something exciting.
And lastly, do you believe in aged wine in screw cap?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that concludes today. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and you deserve a well-deserved rest after all those years of studying. And it's a truly remarkable achievement, and yeah, good luck with the rest of your career.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Behind the Wines. A huge thank you for joining us. Your support means everything. Like a good wine, the best stories are meant to be shared. So make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, leave a comment, and let us know your thoughts on our socials. And go to our website for some more stories, special offers, upcoming events, and exclusive content. And special thanks to PS Wine Selections for your ongoing support. Until next time, cheers.